As ailing municipalities find ways to generate more revenue, changes to property tax regulations could see game farms paying up to 15 times more in rates. This is according to a MoneyWeb article. Game farms would be billed in terms of commercial rather than agricultural scales. Let's find out what this means. We're joined by Jacques Blaauw, chairperson of the Tabazimbi Business Chamber, as well as the Chairperson's Forum, which includes Wildlife Ranching South Africa's Tabazimbi chapter. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon, Jacques. Perhaps just make us understand what this proposal essentially means and how it came about.
Thank you for the opportunity to do, and good afternoon to all listeners. I think how it came about is probably municipalities having a look at revenue collection avenues and specifically interpreting the Municipal Rates Act, where it defines that a municipality can put forward certain categories of property owners, and then specifically in the rural areas, looking at the definition of agricultural property, where the Municipal Rates Act excludes game farms and ecotourism from agricultural properties, seeing that as an avenue to the additional category specifically for game farming. The issue, however, is the tariff that they now apply to that property in the business tariff, which is basically twice the residential tariff, but as high as 18 to 15 times what the previous agricultural tariff was that normally governed these properties.
If you were to give us a figure, perhaps just help us understand from what base to what base are we looking at?
Well, if we go back 2 years when our local municipality introduced the tariff, let's take 1,000 hectare property valued at about 7.5 million, because it always starts at the value of the property. You looked at a jump from 6,500 rand tax up to 93,000 rand tax. So it's a significant jump from what the landowner previously would have paid for property tax.
It is quite a substantial increase. Are you against this? If so, why? Are game farms not businesses?
I don't think it's a good enough for or against it. I think it's about how we implement what the Rates Act, is governing municipalities to do. So let's look at the mechanisms. There is a mechanism where you can tax property based on multiple use. So I don't think with the farmers that I've interacted there's any issue if the lodge area could be defined, let's say 1 hectare of the farm, and that 1 hectare is then taxed, as a business, like the definition would basically hold. The issue comes the implementation of this definition at the municipal level, and especially at the account level. They take a blanket approach. So they take the one tariff and apply it to the whole farm. So suddenly, instead of the 1 hectare being used for business, 1,000 hectares are now taxed at, business rate. And I think that's where the issue comes in.
What options are then available to yourselves?
I think it's to consult in and interact with your local authority. All of the municipalities should now be in the midst of the annual integrated development plan and budget review processes. So there should be public notices, out to ask the public to, deliver comments and participate. And then I think it's sitting, like we've tried to do, around the table and trying to understand the rationale of how, certain decisions have led to the outcome that we then feel on the ground or on the properties per se. And then finding mutual ground. As I said, I haven't seen anyone object if they understand what the Act is about, if they understand, how the policy must relate to that. And we're just asking for proper and fair implementation. But to come and, tax a property of 1,000 hectares based on one rate, where previously it would have been 0.25 of the residential rate, and suddenly have it as twice the residential rate, that's quite an impact, especially if you take what game farming has just gone through. As far as COVID-19, most of the trade has been stopped for these farms over the last 2 years. Prior to that, we've had severe droughts. and then where people were forced to change their practices from farming with cattle to farming with game. So it's making sure that we understand each other around the table and that there's proper implementation of what's intended.
What are the ramifications if this drags on for years?
Well, I think the ramification, is that property owners are going to get more and more under pressure to meet their daily demands. Farming is like any business. You've got an income stream that you need to generate to cover your expenses. And at the end of the day, if the income is not sufficient, yes, you need to go and look at expenses. But tax is tax. You can't really run away from it. But at the end of the day, it's part of your expense picture. And one could assume that a farmer could then have to make difficult choices, either selling his farm, trying to subdivide, into unproductive units, or even job losses. So, it could have various ramifications. But I think all of that could be prevented with proper consultation, proper engagement between entities, and making sure that both sides and the needs on both sides are understood, and that we get to joint solutions rather than, contending each other.
Jacques, there are also market pressures. You speak of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact. The article has spoken to at least one case study that is currently paying 433 Rand per month in accordance with the agricultural tariffs. But these are also spaces where you have international visitors who would pay, and the article cites some 30,000 Rand to hunt a kudu. So as the space is opening up a little bit more in terms of international travel and people returning to the country, do you perceive that perhaps some of this is fair to ask for?
Yeah, I guess I'm not the one to, make comments on what's fair and what's not fair. I think at the end of the day, it's about making sure that we implement to meet the intention of what tax should be about. On the other side, it has to be dealt with on the individual case. So you could have one farmer that has an international market. A lot of other farmers are, reliant on the domestic market. So, one cannot have a blanket approach. One needs to look at it individually and make sure that we get to the multiple use implementation of tariffs. I think that's the key. And then it's also taking into regard what the property has gone through. If it is a property in an area where we've had severe drought, with years of a lack of income, there should be, that should be part of the picture as much as a property that has, had a booming year because of international hunting or international visitors. So it's a very difficult thing for a municipality to probably balance, but that's exactly why there's consultation into matters.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Jacques Blaauw is the chairperson of the Tamba Zimbi Business Chamber.